Zohran Mamdani, a 33-year-old Democratic socialist, stunned the New York City political establishment by defeating Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic mayoral primary through an aggressive social media campaign. His success challenges traditional political marketing and approaches and offers some insights into modern voter psychology. So, in order to discuss that psychology, we chatted with one of the best marketing minds I know, Phill Agnew from Nudge Podcast. Hey, Phill. Great to have you on the show. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
Yeah, it's nice to catch up again.
So I wanted to kind of analyze with you the Zohran campaign. And first thing I wanted to ask you that what maybe he did differently that you perhaps haven't seen in a political campaign before in terms of persuasion.
Well, John, and to the listeners, fair warning that you probably couldn't have had someone on the show who knows less about politics in general, especially New York politics. I mean, you just listen to my accent, guys. What am I going to know? What I do know, however, is the psychology, the behavioral science about persuasion, about how people are able to persuade others to their point of view. And John, maybe for the listeners, you can share a bit about it as well. But like the way he conducted his campaign, he used a lot of interesting social media tactics, created a lot of very videos that people feel that they could relate to. He seemed like you weren't really voting for a politician. You were voting almost for a friend, someone who gets you. That was sort of how he went about it, right?
It very much seemed that way. He was doing a lot of social media campaigns. I think he's just been very, very active in the New York community. And I like something you said there, that he kind of approached more as a friend than as a politician. And I feel like that kind of swayed a lot of people. I'd love to hear more from your perspective about kind of changing tone of voice in order to persuade and what that psychologically means.
Well, if you try and persuade someone by telling them what to do, it will almost always backfire. People feel their autonomy is limited, they're far less likely to act. This is known in psychology as reactance. And the famous study behind this was from a Californian nursery. It's this weird nursery, you would call it kindergarten, wouldn't it? Weird kindergarten in California. I don't know why. It's a really like wealthy place, and all these rich kids go there. And they've let some psychologists in over the years to run these hilarious experiments. You know, it's like no kids were harmed in the making of these experiments. I'll just clarify that for the listeners. But they've run all these experiments. They've discovered all these amazing things about human psychology. And one of the things that they discovered, one of the experiments they ran, was they had two different classes of children. One where the kids can sort of pick any toy they want to play with, which toy is the most popular, and they find that a certain toy is the most popular. I can't remember what it was. Let's pretend it's a little mini piano. That becomes the most popular. The teddy bear is basically always forgotten. These rich kids have got loads of teddy bears back home. They don't need one of them. So in a study, you always need a variant to compare the two groups.
Sure.
And then the variant, the teddy bear, which was sort of entirely forgotten by the kids in the first version of the scenario, the variant, the teddy bear is put behind perplex glass in the middle of the room. They can't access it, but they can see it. And it's driving these kids mad. It's just like, yes, I can play with every other toy, but I really want to play with that teddy because you're not letting me play with it. My autonomy is limited, and I really have an urge. And so we have this as a child. And the finding basically is that in the scenario where the kids can't play with the teddy bear, they always want to play with it. In the scenario where they can play with every toy, they basically forget about the teddy bear. And this is the idea of reactance. We don't like our autonomy being limited. So if a politician, if a teacher, if a police officer is literally telling me, you should do this, you shouldn't do that, it's going to cause us that reactance. And one of the great examples of somebody who's applied this. When politicians don't sort of tell you exactly what you need to do, you need to eat less red meat, we need to stop doing this, we need to start doing more of this, and actually just appeal to us and seem like people that we understand and get and we trust, they can be far more persuasive.
It's a very interesting concept. I mean, it kind of harkens back to what I think is like reverse psychology of somebody telling you something that you can't do and you immediately want to do the exact opposite. And especially in politics, where I feel like you probably in the UK, you see a lot of this, like political ads, like local ones especially, always like, oh, vote this person, vote that person. Very direct messaging. What you're getting at with it's less reactance. And when you're talking about like that middle ground between like vote for me and a mixed messaging that doesn't actually tell you to do anything or any call to action, what do you think is a good balance out of those things?
I think the balance is a question. So people are far more likely to be persuaded when they feel they have come to their own conclusion. like what we were saying earlier, my autonomy is not being limited. So another set of studies done in the 80s. This is a very interesting study because they presented arguments to students in the study. They were seniors. Some of the arguments were just presented. So, for example, climate change is causing devastating effects in Arizona deserts. Here's a list of facts. Another way they presented the argument is they started with a question. They said, do you agree that climate change is devastating Arizona deserts, yada, yada, yada. What they found was when they started it with the do you agree, they were far more persuasive than when they simply gave the command. Politicians use this all the time. The famous Kennedy ad, which some of the listeners might remember, is, well, would you buy a used car from this man? I can't remember which one it was. And there was a picture of Nixon. And this advert is so incredibly powerful because it doesn't tell people don't vote for Nixon, which we know would backfire. It gets people to think about the question in their own mind. Would I buy a used car from this person?
Does this guy look trustworthy enough for me to buy a used car from? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're doing that mental arithmetic in your head and you feel like you come to your own conclusion, it feels like your autonomy isn't being limited. You come to a conclusion that maybe you wouldn't buy the used car from that person, or maybe you would. But by coming to your own conclusion, you are far more likely to be persuaded by that message than if you were simply told, don't vote for this person or do vote for this person.
Sure.
As I said at the start, I don't know much about US politics. You know, a lot of the anti-Trump rhetoric was don't vote for this man. Don't do it. You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. Same with Brexit was the one in the UK. Do not vote for Brexit. You know, it'll ruin our economy. And in many ways it has. They weren't wrong. But the point is, like, we were told not to do something. Do not do something. And for many, many people, I think for actually the majority of people, we don't like that messaging. And I think the Brexiteers sort of hit on something well, which was that they didn't tell people not to do something. They gave people the hint of freedom. Trump probably does the same thing. I think other politicians do the same thing. And yeah, I think asking a question is a very persuasive way of framing it.
Yeah. I want to know, in your perspective, what role does kind of likability play, not only in politics, but just in marketing in general? For example, if you're a brand and you have a spokesperson and that spokesperson is well liked or that figure is well liked, what can that do for your brand that maybe other tactics cannot? Just that general likability concept.
It's very important, but how do you become likable? This is like the catch-22 for politicians, right? They typically are the least likable people on the planet. I mean, they're literally they've created their whole career is like, I want to be in charge. It's like, who? Come on, get a life. Just go to the pub, relax. So they're typically not very likable, and yet they have to persuade people that they're likable. And this is where you see all this cringe. I mean, in the UK, we've got like politicians doing TikTok videos who definitely shouldn't be on TikTok. It's like, oh my God, this is melting my brain.
Oh my God.
But there is a way to become more likable. And it actually it's a slightly different bias from what we've talked about so far. It's a very interesting one. It's one all of us can remember and should use in our lives. It was a study done by Elliot Aronson, legendary researcher. This again would have been back in the 60s. A very, very interesting study. He recorded a quiz participant answering quiz questions. And this quiz participant was insanely talented. They were answering all these questions correctly. You know, what's the capital of Turkmenistan? They get it right. They get all these questions right. And then at the end, for one set of participants who are watching the video of this very smart quizzer, the video cuts. All you see is the quizzer answering these questions correctly. For another set of participants watching the video, they keep the camera rolling. And the quizzer walks off stage. Now, the quizzer is actually an actor paid by Elliot Aronson, but none of the participants know this. Quizzer walks off stage, is handed a coffee, takes a sip of the coffee, clumsily spills it all down himself. So it's got this big coffee stain. What a doofus. Oh dear. Anyway, Aronson hypothesized was that perhaps an intelligent person who showcases a small weakness, clumsiness, perhaps that intelligence combined with a weakness might make that person more likable. And he shows this video to two groups of people and asks them how likable is the quizzer. And what he finds is that the quizzer who is highly intelligent but spills coffee down themselves is seen as insanely more likable. I shouldn't be attracted to someone who might cause me third degree burns. And yet it's not the case. When someone is just purely showcasing their strengths, it's a turn off. We actually feel like we like someone when we can see their weaknesses. Brands use this really well. Marmite in the UK say you either love it or you hate it. Avis's famous campaign, we're second, so we try harder. Buckley's cough medicine talks about how horrible the taste is. Red Bull doesn't hide the fact that their drink isn't particularly nice. It works for all of these brands because by highlighting weakness alongside a strength, you become more popular. And I think political campaigns, now, some maybe more populist politicians would steer away from this, but I think you could still argue that they have weaknesses in some ways and their fans still embrace those weaknesses. But I think the campaign we've seen in New York is a great example of someone who's not afraid to hide their weaknesses. Definitely an intelligent person, definitely well-spoken, definitely articulate, definitely great in debates, and yet at the same time seems a bit goofy, doesn't really mind making a fool of themselves, doing these silly little videos, sort of seems pretty genuine, down to earth. And I think it's that combination of that strength and that weakness that actually makes someone far more likable. If you're just showcasing your strengths, you won't be seen as very likable.
No, very true. I think it's having that relatability factor, right? And having people say like, oh, he's like me or they're like me. It makes a big difference. And last thing I wanted to hit on here is just general messaging, because of course, I'm sure you hear this all the time, right? There's a lot of messages out there. Brands are trying to get in your ear, creators are trying to get in your face, and everybody wants to tell you something, right? How would you say a message can break through the infinite scrolling deathscape that we're currently in? How would you say that somebody's message could actually break out of that and find an audience nowadays?
Yeah, $1 million, billion question. What behavioral science and psychology can tell us is the laws, the principles that tend to work that can give you a leg up. It won't make me into a US political candidate. There tends to be an idea that distinctiveness is very effective at getting your message to be recalled. Now, there'll be eye rolls for the listeners here thinking, God, I've heard this before. Yeah, stand out and you'll be more likely to be remembered. This isn't just, go to a conference for real estate agents with a mohawk while everyone else is in suit and tie. This is a little bit more nuanced than that, which is that in order to stand out, you shouldn't just think, I need to be different from everyone. I need to paint my brand pink or grow a mohawk. What it actually means is you should look at the messages of those around you and make sure you're not falling into that sea of sameness. Great example of this is a 1990s study that was done with Heineken. Heineken were looking for a new slogan that would make them more memorable. This was in the US. How can you make Heineken? We were just entering the market. How can we make people remember our ads? And so they tested. It was a great A/B test, or A, B, C, D, F test. They tested, I think, 12 different slogans. And they measured the recall a month after people heard them. And they saw them in the wild. It's a great experiment. And the slogans like Heineken, the great taste of beer, instantly forgotten. I think only 8% of people remembered it. Heineken, open your world. Like 4% remembered it. Heineken,
no
the
thanks.
freshest beer you've ever heard. And the reason that doesn't work is because we've heard it all before. We've heard beer brands talk that way. They came up with one slogan, which was, and this US beer fans will understand this. It's a little more nuanced for us in the UK, but I drink enough beer to even understand it myself. Hello. And their slogan was Heineken, the beer that made Milwaukee jealous. Genius slogan, very distinct. I think they brew a lot of beer in Milwaukee.
They do. Their baseball team is called the Brewers, so they do be brewing out in Milwaukee. Yes, that is something.
This slogan, they do be brewing, is another slogan they maybe should have gone for, because I love that as well.
That's coming next.
The slogan, the beer that made Milwaukee jealous, was recalled by 81% of people a month later. So incredibly high recall. And that is not because they went for something totally wacky. They didn't do a ridiculous slogan like beer that tastes like Coca-Cola or beer that tastes like a pink unicorn or something absolutely crazy. They looked at their competitive market and they thought, how can we say something which is slightly different from what has typically been heard? And if you can do that, you're far more likely to stand out. I think this campaign in New York is a great example of someone who was trying to say something slightly different, wasn't lecturing people, trying to talk in their language, trying to make them feel positive about the current state of the world in a liberal way, which is not typically done in politics at the moment. I think liberals tend to lean on more fear-mongering, and I think, trying to frame these things in a positive way is a slightly different angle. And being distinct in that way will make you far more likely to be remembered. But it's not always used, because Heineken, what slogan did they go for? Heineken, open your world. I don't know. They don't even follow their own advice. They don't even follow their own. It's like, come on, guys. It's not that hard.
Couldn't even take the risk with that one. Poor Heineken. Phill, it's been great talking to you. Thank you for your insight on this. A thing that you're very out of bounds on. So I definitely appreciate you coming in well read on this and giving me some psychological tidbits and tactics that this campaign used to really achieve a win here. So thanks for being here, and I'd love to have you back. And obviously, everybody should check out Nudge Podcast to hear more of Phil's lovely psychological rants.
Cheers, John. Thanks very much.
Okay, that's going to do it for us today, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of HubSpot Media. Our editor is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a ton more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go sign up at thehustle.co/email and follow us on Instagram at thehustledaily. We'll catch you later.